Welcome back to my channel. It is now officially June and I can do one of my favorite monthly videos, which is my monthly reading wrap-up. May was a bit of an overwhelming month for me. My name came up on multiple books at the library at the same time. I had my 2 TBR books that I picked and my book club pick. And I had said in a recent video that I noticed that I was doing so much reading I did not have time to focus on my writing. So I wanted to take a step back and kind of see what my reading should look like as I'm trying to sort out my life. So honestly, I spent the majority of May somewhat stressed. And finally, I realized something that felt like maybe I should have realized it sooner, but for whatever reason, I didn't. But I realized I didn't have to read every book I had from the library. It's okay to return some books and check them out later if I want to. Once I took that pressure off myself, I felt a lot better, honestly. That being said, I did finish 8 books in May. Now, 2 of them were books that I had started previously, and I only finished them in the first few days of May. So I read 6 books start to finish, and I finished 2 books for a total of 8. As of the time of recording, I'm 40% of the way through my Goodreads goal for the year. My books totaled 3,005 pages. I read 1 nonfiction, 3 romance, 1 fantasy, 1 mythology retelling, and 2 classics. 3 were ebooks, 4 were hard copies, and 1 was an audiobook. And for my ratings, I had 2 5-bookmark reads, 3 4-bookmark reads, 2 3-bookmark reads, and 1 2-bookmark read. I'm going to start with my lowest rated books and work my way up to the highest rated. First up is my 2-bookmark read, and that was, unfortunately, The Grapes of Wrath by John Steinbeck. This book I actually read over the course of several months. Our family does a lot of driving, going to various places, and my husband and I always have a read aloud. So he usually drives and I usually read a book aloud. So The Grapes of Wrath is the one that we've been working on over the last few months. It was my second Steinbeck novel, and I really wanted to read it because I feel like it's a classic, and it really played an important role in documenting this part of American history and shaping American literature. The book follows a family, the Joad family, as they're forced off their property in Oklahoma, and they join hundreds of families moving west to California where they are hoping to find work. They encounter a lot of obstacles along the way with sickness in the family, a lot of bigotry, and being forced to figure out what to do when you can't provide for your family. I debated quite a bit with my rating, and I actually have a video coming up sometime hopefully soon with a lot more of my thoughts and kind of getting into why I rated it the way that I did. And once that video is up, I'll come back and I'll link to it here. Overall, there were so many themes and takeaways about family and basic human decency and triumph and tragedy and individual versus community. So many great things to think about and discuss. But on the other hand, the writing style itself was really difficult for me to get into. There were some chapters that were very confusing and, in my opinion, somewhat clunkily written. And then the other chapters were written very simply, which there's nothing wrong with that. It was just the combination of the writing styles was a bit jarring to me, and I did not enjoy the reading experience. And I think overall I would just prefer to learn about the Dust Bowl and the Great Depression from other sources. Moving on to my 3-bookmark reads, the first of which is Stone Blind by Natalie Haynes. This book was the book that I picked for my book club read for the month of May. And this book is a Greek myth retelling of the story of Medusa. It was my first mythology retelling, and honestly, I did not know that much about the original myth to begin with. Thankfully, at the beginning, she had a list of characters, which was so good because there are so many characters, and I had to keep flipping back and forth throughout the whole book to figure out who was who and what was going on. But also everything that I had heard about the book, and even the front cover of the book, led me to believe that it was a book about Medusa, and yet Medusa was honestly not in the book very much. So that was kind of a bummer to me. I think overall, it just for sure was not what I was expecting, but I just had a hard time getting into it, and for me, it was a 3-bookmark read. My next 3-bookmark read was Happily Never After by Lynn Painter. This is a romance, and it opens on Sophie's wedding day. They're about to say their vows, the wedding is moving along, when the officiant says, "Does anyone know of a reason this couple should not get married?" And a man stands up and says, "I have a reason, and I have proof that the groom is cheating." Sophie decides to call the wedding off. Fast forward to that night when we find out that this man was actually hired by Sophie's best friend to call off the wedding. And it turns out that this guy, Max, does this fairly frequently. He is an objector at weddings, and he calls off weddings for people who, for one reason or another, feel like they can't call it off themselves. Soon, Sophie and Max start working together, and they start going to weddings together to object. And of course, along the way, they end up falling in love themselves. I really enjoyed this book until about the halfway point. The premise was cute, it seemed really unique, I'd never read a book with that storyline, but for some reason, about halfway through, it just kind of lost me. I wasn't feeling as gripped by the romance, and then Max started displaying some red flag macho man wanting to punch people behavior, which I just don't need in my life, even fictional stories. So for me, it was a 3 bookmark read. Moving right along to my 4 bookmark reads, I read Maybe in Another Life by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This book kind of explores the question that I think a lot of people have asked at one point or another. What would have happened if I had made another decision? Hannah is 29, but she's still trying to figure out what she wants to do with her life. She ends up moving to Los Angeles, which is where she was from originally, and she moves in with her best friend. One night, she and her best friend go out together, and Hannah runs into her high school boyfriend. At the end of the evening, her best friend asks her, hey, are you ready to go home? And Hannah has to make a choice. Does she say yes to her best friend and go home with her friend? Or does she say yes to her high school boyfriend and see where that might end up? I listened to this on audio and it was an easy read, but also I liked how it talked about what things are destined, what things are meant to be, what happens if I choose something else. It was an interesting book, so I gave it 4 bookmarks. My next 4 bookmark read was Iron Flame by Rebecca Yarros. This is the 2nd book in the Empyrean series. I liked it, but not as much as Fourth Wing. It does pick up pretty much where Fourth Wing leaves off, so I don't want to say too much about plot because I don't want to give away any spoilers. I did initially have trouble getting into it, but I think for a couple reasons. One, there was just a lot going on in my personal life that I think played into it, but I had also kind of heard a few little spoilers about the book, and I think that made me kind of less excited to jump into it. But once I got past that initial hesitation, I started to really enjoy it. I liked that it was still full of action and full of things happening, but it still had a very different feel from Fourth Wing. It felt more, I was gonna say serious. I don't know if that's the adjective I'm looking for. I liked that you could tell that it was still the same story, but it was a different season. Like they were kind of different people for sure than at the start of Fourth Wing, but it still felt like it fit and it flowed. I don't know, I really liked it. Even though it's over 600 pages, it was still a pretty quick and easy read for me once I got into it. I do have a lot of thoughts on it, but I try to keep these monthly recap videos spoiler-free, so for now I have to keep my thoughts to myself. My final 4 bookmark read was The House of Mirth by Edith Wharton. I actually read this book aloud on my other YouTube channel where I read aloud public domain books. I honestly did not know much about this book before I started, so it felt very new to me. The story is about Lily Bart, who grows up with a fair amount of money and the society that comes with that. She's now close to 30, her parents have both died, and she has started to run out of money. Lily has to figure out how to survive and provide for herself during a time period when women had very few options. I really liked the social commentary and Lily's story. So often, especially in that time period of the early 1900s, but even still today, women are given such narrow boxes to exist in, and they're handed very specific ways that they need to act. So I was just really rooting for Lily and for her to use the resources that she did have to try to create a path for herself and a life for herself. On to my 5 bookmark reads. The first one was Funny Story by Emily Henry. I did a whole video on this book. I really, really liked it. I'll link to my video here with more of my thoughts on it, but it was a very sweet romance. I really liked the characters. I really liked their character arcs. And it's definitely one of my top Emily Henry reads. And my last 5 bookmark read was See No Stranger by Valerie Carr. This is the book that the Spin the Wheel picked last month for my virtual TBR, and I am so glad that the Wheel picked this book. Valerie Carr is a Sikh activist, a filmmaker, and a civil rights lawyer. The whole premise of the book is how if we can all, as humans, get past our prejudices and biases and truly see no stranger, and listen to people to truly understand, then we can all be a part of bringing in this revolutionary love to our communities. She talks a lot about the aftermath of September 11 in the United States. And I'll be honest, I only knew a small portion of what she talked about. I knew that there were hate crimes following September 11th, but I truly did not realize how widespread it was and how so many of the hate crimes that are happening today are still linked to September 11th and the way that certain things were handled. I also did not know very much about the Sikh faith or practices. I'm really thankful for her book, that I could read it and learn from her and educate myself on not just historical things, although that too, and policies that were put in place and all sorts of things that created this culture. You'll have to read the book. I'm not going to get into all the things, but all of those things that I was able to learn through reading her book. And to just hear about the power of seeing no stranger, of what it means to truly listen to other people, and what it means to radically love ourselves, our friends, and even our opponents. I truly don't think that her messages will leave me anytime soon. So that was my May reading. I did not yet finish the book that I unwrapped last month for my physical TBR, The Glamour of Grammar. I'm about halfway through. I will finish it, but I'm just taking it in smaller chunks. I love words. I love nerding out about words. So I would think that this book would be just delightful to me, and it is in some ways, but it's also quite dry and boring. So it's delightfully boring. Anyways, I'm taking it in smaller chunks, but I am still working on it and I will finish it. So, plans for my June reading. I really want to take my summer slowly. At least as slowly as I can with all the things that are inherent to summer. I am really hoping this summer to deliberately pull back on my reading, or at least be more intentional in how I'm reading. If I don't want to read, I don't want to read. If I want to read, I want to read. I want to make sure that I am spending quality intentional time with my kids and making sure that I'm carving out intentional time for my writing. So we'll see how June ends up going. I am going to be drawing a new paper for my wrapped physical TBR. I am going to spin the wheel for my virtual TBR, and I do have the book club pick for my book club, which is, where did it go? 6 Crimson Cranes by Elizabeth Lim. So those books will probably be my top priority, but again, if I don't get to them, it's gonna be okay. I'm kind of thinking I want to try to read Mistborn in June, and I have some ideas for possible books to read for maybe some video ideas coming up. But again, I'm holding all these plans loosely, and we'll just see what my reading looks like. So the first thing I'm gonna do is spin the wheel for my virtual TBR. And my virtual TBR are books that I have found from pretty much anywhere, either other booktubers or Goodreads list, or anytime I hear a book where I'm like, oh, that could be interesting someday, I throw it on my virtual TBR. And so this wheel has a small portion of those books. Okay, so I'm gonna spin the wheel and let's see what we get. Oh my gosh, The Lightning Thief. I am excited about this. My son loves Percy Jackson, and I am excited to try the series. And I think that'll be a fun palate cleanser after The Glamour of Grammar and all of these others. I'm excited about this one. Okay, and now to pick a book for my physical TBR. All of my books are still downstairs because I haven't moved my bookshelves upstairs yet, so I'll have to pause and run downstairs to get it. I hope this is gonna be a good one. I'm nervous. Let's see. Number 10. Okay, I'm gonna go get the book and I'll bring it back up here to unwrap. Okay, I have book number 10. It's a smaller one. I legitimately cannot think of what this is, so let's find out. Ooh. Oh, I'm excited. Seasonal self-care rituals. I got this actually at Five Below on a whim, so I'm excited. Eat, breathe, move, and sleep better. So this will be fun. Another nonfiction, which is fun. I enjoy reading nonfiction, but you would think at some point, I've only done this 2 months now, you would think at some point there'd be a fiction book, but I am very excited about this. Okay, so I have The Lightning Thief, I have Seasonal Self-Care Rituals, I have 6 Crimson Cranes for my book club, and beyond that, we'll see where the month takes me. Let me know in the comments if you have specific books you're planning to read in June, what book you're most looking forward to reading, and until next time, happy reading. My next 4 bookmark read was Iron Flame by Rebecca Yarros, the second book in the Empyrean season.